and welcome to a very special episode of HateRead. I'm Anna.
And I'm Em. Every fortnight here on HateRead, we challenge one another to read a book that we think the other will hate. But for this fortnight, we are instead reading a book that Anna knows that she will hate. Anna decided for her revisit episode to choose Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. So, Anna, first things first, why do you hate this book?
Because, okay, so here's my thing, and it's not just Laura Ingalls Wilder, because, I'm sorry, she's just like the target of my wrath this week. It's every book that takes place in like this prairie way of life and living and, you know, roughing it out in the American wilderness in this particular time period. I grew up in Kansas. I did my entire public education in the state of Kansas. And for some reason, just because I lived in the place that was formerly the Great Plains, meant that every teacher had to assign a book every year that took place on the Great Plains and described the great American struggle of creating life out there in the wilderness.
We got that too, but our regional identity that we chose to latch onto in middle school was the whole Underground Railroad thing. So we got a lot of books on the slave trade and escaping the slave trade.
I don't think we had a single book on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, we had a lot. Which, incidentally, fun story, when I was in 4th grade, around that probably, we had to write a short story about slaves escaping on the Underground Railroad and getting to freedom.
Huh.
And I shamelessly plagiarized a big part of my story from one of the Redwall books.
That's amazing.
So,
that's amazing.
That's my biggest shame. No, it was one, and I can't tell you which of the Redwall books. All I know is that there were a family of rodents of some kind, I believe hedgehogs, but who knows, that escaped some sort of situation, and when they got to freedom, the hedgehog mom, I'm gonna say hedgehog, I don't know if it was hedgehogs, the hedgehog mom gave birth to a hedgehog baby, and they asked the hedgehog dad what they wanted to name the baby, and the hedgehog dad was like, oh, Joy! And so the baby's name was Joy, and I just ripped that off, and I did the exact same thing, except with a family of escaped slaves in Canada, and there were twins, so it was joy and jubilation, and my teacher loved it. My teacher was like, this is great, you are so innovative, A+.
Wow, that Emily, she's so creative.
That's how I plagiarized a Redwall book and shoehorned it into an issue of slavery.
Well, you know, right what you know, I guess. Going through a big Redwall phase in 4th grade, huh?
Yeah. Redwall was great, though. But I did read the Little House series as a kid, and I really, really liked it. And we did read it in school. And this is the thing. It was surreal for me rereading this book because I remembered everything in this book on a visceral level. But if you had asked me beforehand what happened in this book, I would have absolutely no clue. And I feel that way about
because
all
nothing
the other
happened in this book.
No, nothing happens. Nothing happens in this book. But every single little anecdote where she's like, oh, and then we did this, and then my doll had this dress. And I was like, yes, I remember that dress. Yes.
The red calico, yes.
But I do remember they did teach this in, like, early school years, because
it was like second.
I remember we had like a Little House day or something, and maybe I'm making this up, but I specifically remember being fed head cheese. Like, I remember that as a thing that happened, and I also think my mom was in charge of doing the maple candy, like where they pour it on the sugar and then
that's the
freeze
fun
it or
job.
whatever. Right, so I don't know how much of this is actual things that happened when I was in 1st grade and how much of it is something that I have made up in my mind, but I remember these things.
Yeah, and for our non-American listeners, that's probably between the ages of like 6 and 8 that we would have read these books.
Yeah, and I mean, reading them now, I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as I did as a child.
Ugh. I hated it even more if possible.
But I will say, I guess because I haven't been force-fed the prairie narrative, I'm still kind of interested in this as just like an anthropological study, you know? Here are things that people did in the 1860s, and isn't that interesting? Does it work as a narrative?
No, it's just a list of chores. That's all this book is a in-depth list of chores, how to complete them in the 1860s wilderness of the big woods of Wisconsin. Oh, it was even worse than I remembered. Because I guess in my mind, I was thinking, Little House in the Big Woods. The big book in this series is Little House on the Prairie, because that's when they actually pick up and they move and they go to the prairie to start a new life. Yeah. And the events of that one are a lot more significant, and the events of the winter one. What is that one called? Like Little House in the Big Winter or something, probably. Where Mary gets...
Isn't it just like The Long Winter?
Probably.
Is that it? Or is that a chapter from Game of Thrones? No, those don't have chapter titles.
Those chapter titles are character names.
Yeah, my bad. Don't at me. Let me look up Laura Ingalls real quick and see what else she wrote.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's Little House in the Big Woods, Farmer Boy, which is about her husband's early life.
Yeah, no one's ever read that one.
Right, no one cares about that. Little House on the Prairie, On the Banks of Plum Creek, By the Shores of Silver Lake, The Long Winter, Little Town on the Prairie, and These Happy Golden Years. Those are the Little House books, and then she's done some other stuff.
Yeah. So I guess the two that always stick out in my mind as the ones that were like most read and most beloved of this series are the Little House on the Prairie and The Long Winter, because that's the books where things actually happen. In The Long Winter, like Mary gets scarlet fever and goes blind. Yeah, so take that, Blondie.
Yeah, the amounts of like vitriol towards her blonde sister in this. Well, I mean,
she's 4 or 5 in this book.
She's 4 or 5, but there's a lot of who's better, blondes or brunettes, and everyone being like, "Oh, isn't blonde hair so pretty?" And she very obviously internalized that a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure that affected her for many years. And if people back then had therapists, she would have gone to one.
Yeah, there would have been a lot of talk on someone's couch about how her blonde sister gave her an inferiority complex. But yeah, so her sister gets scarlet fever, right? And then she ends up being a teacher?
I think so.
Is that a thing? Yeah.
I don't know.
By the end of this. And she gets married because
that guy and then eventually die or whatever.
Did she write about her own death?
Probably.
I don't think
Probably. And as I lay here on my deathbed.
What a sad turn.
That would have been a lot more interesting than this book.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because nothing happens in this book. There's a lot of bears and things that are thought to be bears but turn out to be logs.
Yep.
A lot of smacking of bears. A lot of shooting at bears.
And panthers.
Panthers.
In the woods of Wisconsin.
Well, I think that's a linguistic thing, because I remember talking about this in high school in my biology class about how like panthers are called different things. Like, so I think they're talking about mountain lions. I'm pretty sure
that would make sense.
What we would call mountain lions, but I guess in that particular area they refer to them as panthers. Because when I say panthers, I'm thinking like down south, like Florida panther would be one, and then like I don't know what do you consider
thinking of
panther?
What's his name from Jungle Book?
Yeah, like there's like Florida panthers, which are like reddish, I think, and then there's like black panthers.
Oh, I always think of the black panther.
Yeah. So, yeah, I definitely don't think, but I'm pretty sure they're talking about mountain lions. It's not Bagheera. That makes a lot more
Bagheera
sense. Is not making a guest appearance in this book.
Yeah, Bagheera. That's what his name was. I couldn't remember.
Another book that is also very boring.
I have not read that one. Let's not.
Let's not.
Let's not revisit that.
We're not doing that.
But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like these books I've always been a reader. I've always loved reading. But these books really ruined a lot of other really good books for me. Like, I can't stand any John Steinbeck. I hate Willa Cather. I can't do any of that, like, Dust Bowl, Great Depression, Manifest Destiny stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
the genre as a whole is lost to me because of Laura Ingalls Wilder.
Here's another thing that is a fact about me, which, Anna, you know. When I have spare time, I sometimes volunteer at a living history museum, in which my job is to replicate the sort of chores that are in this book for small children and force them to do them. So, I don't know. I still am, like, again, I'm interested in it from, like, an anthropological point, but at the same time, it's kind of glossing over a lot of stuff that maybe should be addressed. And there's... Specifically, I'm talking about the use of the Darky song. Really, that's what I'm talking about. The weird racism.
Glazed over that.
Which
this book was written in the 1930s, right?
Right. And it's about the 1860s. So
some... I don't want to say that you can, like, understand why some of it was not mentioned, but... I mean, that was Civil War was happening. And there's a couple mentions of it.
Yeah, they talk about the Johnny Cakes or whatever, and why that might be named
the Johnny Rebels.
Johnny Cake because of the Johnny Rebs. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something that if I was using this as a teaching aid, I would but then that's like erasing stuff. I don't know. It was just very weird because it never really came up at any other point in the book, but then it was just this one random racist song.
Here's a collection of Dad's favorite songs. By the way, this one's hella racist. Right.
So that was fun for everyone.
So anyway, here's I can't think of a folk song.
So anyway, here's Yankee Doodle.
So anyway, here's She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain.
Can we also address, and I don't know, I may have been reading into this too much, but can we address the fact that it seems to me that another thing that Laura Ingalls might needed to have talked out with a therapist was her serious Electra complex?
Oh, yeah. She had a very special relationship with Pa, didn't she?
Like, okay, here's the thing. Reading this book, Pa sounds hot. Like, Pa sounds...
He's a total babe.
I'd fuck Pa, right? Like...
Yeah.
But, like, this is from her viewpoint.
Why do we feel that way from her viewpoint?
Right. Like, even ignoring the fact that her as a child is clearly idealizes her father, which that's very realistic, that's very childlike. But she's an adult writing this.
Yeah.
She wasn't a child writing this. She was an adult writing this. It's just very... I kept being like, why does she want me to... Am I just trying to come up with something to make this interesting? And it's clearly not going to be Ma, because she was totally milquetoast. The vibes I was getting towards Pa was just like, I feel really bad for that farmer boy, because he's got a lot to live up to. Like, let me tell you.
Yeah, she's a little bit obsessed with her dad.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess if you live in a house, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you, no one within miles, I guess you're gonna develop some weird types of relationships with your family members.
A lot of animosity towards your sister, a lot of sexually unexplored feelings towards your father. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's the 1860s. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, and then, like, speaking of, like, I don't know, being obsessed with her father and her sister's appearance, she has a lot of feelings toward her entire family's appearance. Like, her mom, she always comments on how her mom is so beautiful and so thin.
That
and
line,
perfect and
I sent you that line. That line fucked me up as a kid. That line
please share. Please share with the audience.
Let me find it, because I'm using the free Gutenberg Canada version.
Yeah, so to set up this quote Emma's looking for, they are going to a dance that is being held at Laura Ingalls' grandmother and grandfather's house to celebrate the collection of maple syrup, I guess. I don't know. And so all the
you gotta find something. You gotta find something to celebrate.
And
there wasn't much to do.
All the women folk are in a room together getting ready for this dance, and Laura is, of course, noticing her mother's appearance and what the other women are saying about her mother.
Aunt Dosea pulled as hard as she could on Aunt Ruby's corset strings, and then Aunt Dosea hung on to the foot of the bed while Aunt Ruby pulled on hers. "Pull, Ruby, pull!" Aunt Dosea said, breathless. "Pull harder!" So Aunt Ruby braced her feet and pulled harder. Aunt Dosea kept measuring her waist with her hands, and at last she gasped. "I guess that's the best you can do," she said. "Caroline says Charles could span her waist with his hands when they were married." That line.
Yes.
That line got me fucked up.
That is so, like, I just, like, held my
so
hands
tiny.
in front of my face and stared at it for I don't know how long.
Where do your organs go?
And even if he has, like, big old man hands, like, dude. We're making...
We are both... We're both currently making circles with our hands and showing them to each other, which I realize is not great for this audio format, but trust us, it's a very small
do this
circumference.
At home. Take your left hand.
Do it
make
now, listeners.
The shape of a C, and then take your right hand and make the shape of a backward C, and slowly bring your fingertips together until you want to cry at how skinny that woman was.
Like, literally, though, as a kid, because here's the thing, I sent Anna this text with this line, and I was like, I could not remember where this line was from, but I have remembered this line for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when they talk about the, like, standards of beauty in pop culture, I'm like, oh, yeah, like, spanning the breadth of your waist with your husband's hands, like that's what you're talking about, right? Like, literally, that's the thing that pops into my head when people talk about that. Forget Barbie dolls, forget magazines, Laura Ingalls Wilder. That is my unrealistic expectation of weight standards that has affected me.
She's the real criminal here. She's the real criminal here. and you know, okay, so I was telling Em I have the illustrated version that I downloaded from the Kindle store, and none of those women are that skinny in this book. At least from the illustrations.
Maybe his hands are just really big.
Maybe he just has the hands the size of, I don't know, car tires.
That's what we should be talking about, is Pa's freakish hand size.
Yeah, let's body shame him for a second. Can you even wear gloves?
Ma in general is such a, like, I don't know, maybe it was just my reading of her, but she barely got to speak. Pa was always running his mouth off. And wouldn't Ma be the one watching these dumb kids most of the time? Why isn't she talking to them? Why isn't she telling them stories? What's going on? What's going on,
There's
Ma?
no time for stories when you're doing chores, Em.
When you're making fancy butter.
Yeah.
She's busy with the fancy
She's
butter.
molding the butter into the shape of rose petals or something.
Again, like, I guess they didn't have television, so that's what you're gonna do.
Yeah, what else are you gonna do all day?
Just make sure your butter's all fancy.
You don't have any neighbors to make it fancy for. I don't know why you couldn't have just had a rectangle.
Right, like, who cares?
Whatever.
Gotta have that fancy butter.
Yeah, and she clearly, like, I don't know, to me it came off as, like, they made mention of her having come from a fancier background before she met Charles and went off with him into the big woods.
Yeah.
Like, she had all of her dresses designed for her by the dressmaker and blah, blah, blah in her past life. Like, I'm feeling a little resentment here from Caroline and her current state of affairs. Like, she's been sequestered away in this house in the big woods.
She's just sullenly sitting there making butter, looking at her kids like, oh, you little anchors.
If it weren't for the three of you, I would have been long gone.
I could have married a horse breeder.
I could be living in Milwaukee right now.
Not out in these woods with this man whose job is shooting bears. What is his job? Does he have one? Because they're not like, I don't know. I guess they're farmers.
Yeah,
do they have a farm?
They live off the land. Yeah, because they talk about bringing in those threshing machines.
Yeah.
And so I guess they have some sort of harvest. And they seem to do well for themselves because they're always getting fancy fabrics and, you know, they don't seem to want for much. But, what a sad existence. Just like,
1800s just sound really boring.
I know. And like, why would, if there was a town, why wouldn't you just live in it?
Just go live in the town. Go live in the
Just
town.
go live in the town. You could.
Why are
You guys
here?
could work at like the community garden instead of having to have your own. Like, I don't know.
Just seems like you're a bunch of hermits.
And he never brings the family into town.
They tried to live in the town first, but they shunned Ma because of her fancy butter ways. They're like, we don't need your kind around here.
They shunned Pa for his giant hands. He breaks every glass in the bar. We just can't have him here anymore, Mayor.
Can't have him here. But then it's like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer situation where one day they really need a shovel.
Or like, can no one open this jar of pickles?
Their town shovel has broken and they're just like, whatever shall we do? And Pa comes through with his giant trowel of hands.
I know
it's just like, I'm here, guys.
I know you've shunned me for years, but I will help you dig these holes.
And everyone learned a lesson that day.
Yeah, and everyone's like, well, maybe that family out in the big woods ain't so bad. But then, like, he goes to pet a dog and completely smashes it. And they're like, oh, no, you go back. You go back out there. Take your ugly family. Leave the blonde one, but the rest can go.
That can be Pa's new folk song. Old Shovelhands and Ingalls out in the woods. What did you shovel today?
Oh my god.
Uh,
I couldn't have done it. That's all I know. Reading this book, I couldn't have done it. So I guess good
I
on
wouldn't
you,
have lasted.
Caroline.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't seem to have any options. You were being held prisoner by Old Man Shovelhands.
And these 3 children that you spawned.
Don't make me smack you again, Caroline.
We have to stop making spousal abuse jokes on this podcast. I edited out so many of them.
Oh god.
I had to edit like 20 minutes of our Christmas with the Cranks episode. I joked about that for so long.
And that was already a short episode. Oh my god, we're messed up. We're all kinds of messed up, guys. That's alright. Don't worry about it.
Oh man.
My marriage is perfect.
Yeah, I'm a little worried. Is my brother beating you? What's going on?
Well, I don't know. I guess, like, that begs the question then, who is doing the beating? Would it be me, the one that laughs about it, or or him, the one that's quietly crying in the corner right now? I don't know.
Is my brother there? Put him on camera. Put him on camera right now, Anna.
Oh, he fell down the stairs.
I'm cutting all of this.
It'll be bigged up.
Oh, man.
I don't know why it's some of our best material. Old man Shovelhands. Oh man.
Oh jeez.
So I guess if anyone does want a summary of this book,
we'll go through it real quick.
It's basically a year in the life of Laura Ingalls Wilder, from winter all the way back again to winter, all of the tedium that occurs in her day-to-day life, how many kids she plays with, how many pairs of mittens she gets, her jealousy over how her sister's piece of candy has more words. You know those, like, chalk Valentine hearts? Yeah, she was jealous because her sisters had more words on it than hers
They
did.
literally have to make up things to get jealous about because it's so boring in the 1800s.
It's the most exciting moment was when they were outside playing and Mary said, everyone knows that, like, blondes have more fun, or whatever.
That's exactly what she said. She said it in a breathy Marilyn Monroe voice. Everyone knows that blondes have more fun.
Blondes just have
happy birthday, Mr. President. That's 100% what happened in this book. Is it not?
And then I don't remember. Probably though. And then Laura just straight up smacks the bitch, and I was like, "Yeah, girl."
I don't know the part where they accidentally smack a bear was pretty good. That was some level
that too.
Of interest.
The bear they thought was
and then they smack it, and then they realize it's a bear, and then they run back in the house and hide, and then they have to wait for Pa to come home, and then Pa comes home, and he's like, "Oh, I encountered a bear in the woods, but it was a log." Which, okay,
and then Caroline's sitting in the corner like, silently freaking out about the fact that she smacked a real bear.
But the bear was a log thing makes me really, really wonder about how stupid people were before like television and pictures, where they could see like an actual picture of a thing and be like, oh, that's what that thing looks like. Because it reminded me of did you ever read Last of the Mohicans?
No.
Okay, so that's a bad book too. I hate it. We could talk about that for like 3 hours. But
let's not read it for this, though.
Right, we're not going to read this. In that book, there's a whole section where, to be clear, that is a bad book in the sense that, okay, I need to, all right, that's a bad book because of the treatment of the female characters. Like, the rest of it, there are good parts of it. It's good for literary study, all that sort of stuff. So, don't at me. But there's
our most disclaimer heavy episode yet.
Right.
Little House in the Big Woods.
So there's a part in that book where they are running around in the woods, and there's a whole series of people disguising themselves as other things. And there is a point, and it's been a while since I read this, so I could get this wrong, but there is a point where a guy disguises himself as a Native American, disguised as a beaver.
What?
Like, that's all the context you need. Just understand that there is a part in this novel that was well received and is still studied today, where a man disguises himself as a beaver and people accept that. And no one goes, nobody's going to believe you're a beaver. You're a fully grown human. Which makes me think that people didn't know what beavers looked like, or assumed that beavers could grow to be 6 feet tall. Like,
that could be.
Like, that there was just some, like, the beavers that they saw were the young beavers, and there were hidden giant beavers elsewhere deeper in the woods.
The mommy and daddy beavers live deeper in the big woods.
This reminded me of that, where I'm like, even if it's dark out, I don't think that I would confuse a bear. Like, maybe on first glance I'd be like, oh, a bear. But then after yelling at it and shouting at it and throwing things at it for several minutes, I think I'd have figured it out. Like, I don't think I'd still be like, this is just a bear that's holding very still.
A stubborn bear.
A stubborn, very still bear. Something would clue me off.
Well, and I think, personally, because the Pa character tells a lot of these kinds of stories where he's, like, going up against an animal and it turns out to not be a thing, or it turns out to not be a problem or something at the end of the day. I think he's just telling these stories to his family to scare them into thinking they have to stay with him. Again, back to my Pa is keeping everyone captive in the little house in the big woods. Because he tells another story about how he went to he found like a honey tree or something, and it's full of bees swarming. So what this man does, it's full of bees swarming it, and there's also a bear that's very interested in this honey, and it's eating the honey as he comes upon the tree. So what Pa does is he makes a lot of noise to scare the bear away, and is successful. Which, if it's a black bear, I guess, like, with those big hands, he probably did look like a very intimidating creature to this black bear.
Shovel hands.
But then he proceeds to chop down the tree, slice it in half, scoop out wash bins full of honey and honeycomb, and bring it back to the family. And they're like, but Pa, didn't you get stung by any of the bees? And he literally just says, I never get stung by bees. But, like, in a way that you're like, okay, Pa has a special power where he avoids getting hurt, but if I went outside, I would definitely get stung by bees.
Right, yeah. Which goes into my kind of, the thing I said when I first started reading this book. I texted you and I said, this book is a lot better if you read it as if this is a horror movie. So maybe that's how you because there's just certain lines, let me see if I can find a couple of them, that just, especially at the beginning of this book, before you kind of get that this is just how it's written that just
it's
sound
just a book
like
about simple folk.
Right. It sound like it's setting up a horror movie. Like, in the yard in front of the house were 2 beautiful big oak trees. Every morning, as soon as she was awake, Laura ran to look out the window. And one morning, she saw in each of the big trees a dead deer hanging from a branch. Like, that sounds like the setup of a horror movie. And then there's this whole part where they're like butchering the hogs and stuff, but they keep referring to it as butchering time, I think. Let me find that.
It's butchering time.
Right. But it's like capital B, capital T. Like, it's like a sacred, butchering time has come. It's very, because of it, it's all very matter of fact. It sounds very horror movie-esque until you're like, oh no, this is just matter of fact, boring things. But if you read the whole thing as a horror movie in which Pa is a monster shovel-handed being who is holding this family captive, it's actually a lot better.
The hog had stopped squealing. After that, butchering time was great fun.
Yes, exactly. Or, cracklings were very good to eat, but Laura and Mary could have only a taste. They were too rich for little girls, Ma said. Like...
Crackling for the little girl.
Oh, man.
This one's also good. He was blowing up the bladder. It made a little white balloon, and he tied the end tight with a string and gave it to Mary and Laura to play with. They could throw it into the air and spat it back and forth with their hands, or it would bounce along the ground, and they could kick it. What kind of bladder? I'm not going to tell you. But in my edition of the book, it is accompanied by an illustration.
Oh, another example of Pa trying to trap everyone in the house, right? There were small traps and middle-sized traps and giant bear traps with teeth in their jaws that Pa said would break a man's leg if they shut onto it. Like,
how
come on.
How does he know?
Like, how does he know? And B, he's setting those traps for people. He's trying to keep them in the house.
Yeah, well, see, at first it was like he wanted to protect his family from those that discriminated against the shovel-handed.
Yes.
But then somewhere along the way, things got a little twisted, and now he's actively seeking those people out to kill and butcher them for his family to have fresh meat during the winter.
This is also reminding me very much of like Margaret Peterson Haddix's what is it called? Running Out of Time, I think is what it is. Let me look it up real quick.
That sounds about right. Is that the one where they're like, there's too many kids in the house or something?
No, that's Among
the Hidden. That's Among the Hidden.
Yeah, also a good one. Yeah, it's called Running Out of Time. But it's the one where there's like a community, and it's like an 1800s community, and it's this sort of thing where it's very boring, but something seems slightly off. And then partway through the book, you find out that it's actually like a living history thing that the parents have lied to the children about, and they're all pretending like it's the 1800s, but it's really like 1990. And then you find out that it's actually like a science experiment to test like disease stuff on them. So the girl like escapes and goes out to the outside world to try to find help because the kids are dying inside because they've been like, they have this virus or whatever, and it's something that should be treatable, but like they're not, the scientists behind it aren't treating them for whatever reason. It's really good. It's a very good book for like middle school.
Ooh.
If we have any middle schoolers listening to this,
spoiler alerts first.
Go check out Margaret Peterson Haddix. Forget this Little House shit.
Yeah, go read something good. That does sound actually really good. I was gonna say, or like M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Yeah, that too.
The precursor. Maybe he was inspired. Maybe he read all the Little House books and he was like, I see what you're doing, Laura Ingalls.
I know the truth behind The Little House. Cat. Which kind of brings me into, I guess we can kind of do segments for this, since this is kind of a weird episode. It's not our usual format, but yeah. So we'll do a segment or two here, kind of speaking of books that were similar to this, but that we liked better as kids, maybe. So Running Out of Time is one of them for me, but also the thing that I kept thinking of when reading this was the American Girl series.
Oh,
like the books that were based on the American Girl dolls. which have the same sort of anthropological, oh, this is what it was like at this time. Although obviously this was not written by someone living through it, so I guess maybe there's less validity to it. But, it's still that same sort of idea. But there's actual, like, plot lines and stuff, and people do things and things happen.
Yeah.
So that
and
would
some
be
of them lived in cities.
Yeah, and some of them were not white. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Not a ton of them, but some of them.
Yeah. I so wanted American Girl.
I had Kirsten.
I didn't have any of them. I just had the book.
She was the blonde hair, blue-eyed one.
Oh my god. And I loved, and I know we've talked about this on Twitter in the past, but like all just like the miniature things that you can buy for the American Girl dolls that you could.
So
I don't know
good.
if they still do it. It was so good.
Man.
Just like the little foods.
Well, they had the American Girl dolls and the little things you could buy, but then for a while, they had like just miniature rooms that you could set up that were like magnetic.
Yes.
And
for the American Girl doll that looked like you.
No, they weren't.
Oh, they
weren't big enough for it. They were smaller than American Girl dolls.
Oh.
They were even tinier.
What?
Like they were like yay big, and I'm holding up maybe like a foot to show. Like just square boxes that you could get. They were like magnet on the inside, and you could put magnetic wallpaper on them and then get little furniture and like build a room. And they were tiny and adorable, and I wanted them so bad, but my mom would never buy them for me. Yeah.
Probably because it cost like $400.
Yes, they were hella expensive.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know if I really vocalized how much I wanted them, because I think I was kind of like, well, this is really cool, but I don't understand why I want it, and it's not something I could play with, so I don't really know how to explain this.
I just love.
I just
really
want it to have.
Things.
Yeah, I just want tiny things. Mom.
Yeah,
Mom,
like tiny
please.
things that look like big things.
Yes, please buy me
specifically.
a tiny
I
thing.
like miniatures of things that are actually real life big things.
My friend Kat in high school, her mom collected miniatures, and I would just stare at them. I'd like go to the bathroom, but then instead of like actually going to the bathroom, I'd just go and look at the miniature food can. Like there'd be like little eensy tiny cans, like food cans that were like little tiny, like as big as your pinky nail. They were so little, and they had all the details.
Just like fascinates me.
So great.
I don't know why. Yeah, I think it's the details in it that they get. I'm like, yeah, that does look like a giant. I mean, that does look like a tiny can of corn. Wow, I can even see the kernels. Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know why we're so into many things.
I don't know either, but
anyway, aside from the
surely there are others out there with our affliction. Let us know.
Please tweet at us. But okay,
let us
so
know
Anna,
we're not alone. Yes.
Were there any books in your childhood that were similar to this that you maybe enjoyed more than this, or that were completely different from this?
The one book that is probably pretty obvious that was similar because it is also about farm life, but a completely different kind of farm life, is Charlotte's Web. Love the shit out of some Charlotte's Web.
See, I was never that into Charlotte's Web as a kid. But that's the thing. I feel like there are a lot of books that I just read a ton because they were the book that I had. Like I had Charlotte's Web, so I read Charlotte's Web a lot. Like I could not drive myself to the library and pick out a new book. I just had to read Charlotte's Web.
You had to wait till your mom took you, and then it was overwhelming. There's too many choices. What if you got the wrong book?
It was too much. Too much for my little.
So we'll just stay here and read Charlotte's Web for the 100th time. I love that book, except the only part of Charlotte's Web that I've ever really had an issue with is the part where Wilbur willingly picks up Charlotte's like web and egg sack and puts it in his mouth.
Freaked you out, or?
Oh yeah, I thought that was the most disgusting thing that I'd ever read in my young life.
See, like I said, I wasn't a big Charlotte's Web fan, but I really, really liked Trumpet of the Swan, which was like I had a collection of like E.B. White books.
I never read that one.
And okay, I'm trying to remember what exactly it was about. I know that it was sad, and that's why I liked it. Like it was there was like a deep melancholiness in this book that spoke to me.
Wow.
But I can't remember what it was. I think that let me look it up, because I'm pretty sure it was about a swan that couldn't trumpet. Like it was about a mute swan.
That's some deep stuff, man. Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I can't remember what happens. but I know that there was some romance with another swan, and I think it ended poorly.
Aww.
And it spoke to me deeply.
It set the tone for M's relationship for decades to come. No, just kidding.
Oh, actually, hold on. I'm
The
looking
swan.
at the synopsis. Okay, so it's similar to Charlotte's Web in that it is... Okay, so they give the swan a literal trumpet.
Oh, for its really real lips that it has on its bill.
It learns to split one of his webbed feet with a razor blade, making fingers so he can... Wow,
no,
this is dark.
No, this is too much.
This is dark.
Yeah,
what is
no wonder
happening
you
in this
loved it.
book? I really loved this book as a kid, but I don't remember this.
That sounds horrendous.
Him and the girl swan do get away at the end, I think. So everything's fine. But, oh no! Okay, so it's melancholy because Lewis, the swan, who is employed by a zoo, ends up escaping with Serena, his swan girlfriend. And
What kind of zoo has swans? Well, I guess they're pretty to look at. But...
Well, they have the swan because the swan can trumpet. He works for them as a trumpeter. But there's a whole interspecies friendship angle in this one too, with a human boy and the swan. And they break up at the end. They depart. And then Sam, the boy, hears Lewis at the end 20 years later. And it's
still trumpeting away, huh?
Still trumpeting away. So I don't know why I liked that book, but I liked it better than
Weirdo. You liked it better than Some Pig?
Yes. I found that was too on the nose.
It was Some Pig.
I also remember Charlotte's Web, like I associate it very much with the animated version of Charlotte's Web, which was one of the like 5 movies that was like deemed acceptable to show the children in school when they had a substitute teacher. So we saw that a lot as a kid. So yeah, which was not a great movie.
It was not great, no.
He wrote Stuart Little too.
Oh, did E.B. White do Stuart Little?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Cool.
I think
Good
I
job.
read that book.
It was
or I'm remembering the movie.
That's also a possibility. Again, interspecies friendship between a human and a mouse, I think was the except they adopted the mouse, which that's weird.
Yeah, it was like their son.
Which okay.
Whatever. Good on them, I guess.
E.B. White, something was going on in his life.
Yeah, I really like them animals.
Yeah. Alright, well, did we have any other segments we wanted to talk about?
I don't know.
We kind of talked about, like, what stuff we liked in this book already, so I don't feel we need to go over that.
Yeah.
Oh, what character did you relate to the most?
Oh, gosh. I think the character I related to most was... Oh, I know who it was. Oh, I can't remember his name. Let me look up his name real quick.
I mean, for me, I think it's probably Pa, because, like, I want to have a hot bitch and, like, be able to do whatever I want, and...
And your hands are huge.
Hands have huge hands. Not the shovel hands so much, which we understand is canonic. That the shovel hands is a part of canon now. That
yeah,
that is real. But not the shovel hands so much, but the just being able to lie to your children and get away with it because there's no Google. That would be nice.
Oh yeah. Oh, speaking of like other things in this book that like I guess were kind of Pa influence was like the not being able to do anything at all on Sunday.
Oh yeah, that was man.
That would have been rough. Yeah, like they weren't like, allowed to play or work.
To be fair, it's not like they were doing anything before, so I guess it wouldn't be giving too much up because it's like, okay, I can sit here and stare at this wool for some while, but
I can look at my paper dolls, but I cannot touch them.
Right.
Because that would be play.
I mean, if anything, I think it might add some interest to their life in that it, like, gives them some sort of obstacle to work against, like some sort of, even if it's a self-imposed
their problem solving.
Yeah, well, not even it's just like, it's gotta, I guess it just breaks up the monotony of doing, like, oh, we're doing chores every day, except for the one day where we aggressively don't do chores. You know? Like...
Oh, God. Yeah. You really have to rest on that day of rest. And if you're not resting, God will know.
Terrible. All right, did you,
Oh, yes. So, my character that I identified the most with was Uncle Henry's son, Charlie.
Oh, yeah!
Who, remember, was the 11-year-old boy that they asked to help with the harvest, and Charlie was having too much fun playing, and he wasn't having it. So, like, he didn't put up any fuss. Like, he didn't say, like, no or pout or cry or anything when they asked him to help. He was just extremely unhelpful. Like, he would do things wrong on purpose. He would, like, drag his feet to go get them their supplies. He would lose the supplies. He even did the bit where he, like, pretended to get bit by a snake 3 or 4 different times. But ended up actually, like, it was very Boy Who Cried Wolf. He did end up getting hurt at the end. But, like, it was just very Anna. It was an extremely Anna thing to do.
Very much like that section where it's Charlie is like, oh, I'm hurt, and they come and check on him, and then he does it again and again, and finally they don't check on him. I feel like Laura Ingalls was kind of doing with Boy Who Cried Wolf what I did with the Redwall series, where she's like,
well,
no
see,
one's
but
gonna
your
catch
mistake
this.
was that no one has ever heard of Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's a very obscure text that only the most studious
that's where I went wrong.
have ever read.
That's where I went wrong.
You went too mainstream with your Redwall hedgehog reference.
The 18th Redwall book.
But yeah, I totally feel for Charlie there. You know, when I don't want to do stuff, but like I want to look like I'm helping out, I just do the opposite and hope no one ever asks me again.
Oh man, yeah, we're all Charlie. Really, Charlie did nothing wrong. Hashtag Charlie did nothing wrong.
Yeah, hashtag Charlie did nothing wrong. And you know, I don't know if even Mary. I don't think Mary did anything wrong either. That was my other. Blink did nothing wrong. I think it was Mary. She was just born blonde. She can't help that. Everyone knows brunettes are garbage.
She's gonna get hers in a few books when she goes blind. So whatever.
Yeah.
Enjoy it while you can, like, Mary.
Yeah, I think Laura should be a lot nicer to Mary and, you know, just be more sisterly.
Yeah. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for this fortnight, unless you had anything else you wanted to talk about.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm done with this book and I'm done with chores.
All right, cool. So we are going to be doing a few more of these episodes where we revisit books that we have hated in the past, generally middle school, grade school books. The next book is going to be one that I hated as a kid for a very different reason, which I'm not going to get into too much until we get to that episode. But should I go ahead and tell you what it is now, or do you want it to be a surprise?
Yeah, I want to know.
Okay. So the next time that we do one of these revisit episodes, which I think is going to be 2 episodes from now, is going to be, let me look up the title, make sure I don't mess it up.
I hope it's something I liked.
I think you're going to like this one, actually. Probably. Maybe not. The next book we're going to be reading for this is Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator by Roald Dahl.
Not even the sequel.
It's the sequel,
Charlie
yeah.
and the Chocolate Factory, which I have read once but don't remember anything about.
I read it and it was my most hated book as a kid for a very very specific reason, which I'm gonna talk about on that episode. But you guys are gonna have to tune in to find out why I hate it.
Tricked ya. Now you're here to stay.
When we come back next fortnight, we're going to be back on our regular challenge schedule. So the book that I challenged Anna to last episode is what we're going to be reading for next episode. So until then, you guys can follow us on Twitter at HateReadCast. You can also email us at Gmail at... No, goddammit. You can also email us... Fuck this. You can also email us hatereadcast@gmail.com. If you guys have your... Shut up. If you guys have your own Little House stories to share, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, as well as the stories that traumatized you as children.
Yeah, if you guys have any book that you really, really hated as a kid, just send it our way. You can also follow us, hopefully, on iTunes and SoundCloud.
And thank you, as always, to Ben Cope for the use of his theme song.
In the words of Laura Ingalls Wilder, he whistled cheerfully while he worked, and then he sang, "The birds were singing in the morning, and the myrtle and the ivy were in bloom, and the sun o'er the hills was a-dawning, 'twas then that I laid her in the tomb." Like, why the fuck are you singing that cheerfully?
Such a cheerful song. Because he's a fucking crazy psychopathic murderer.
Last time on HateRead.
We have to go back, Bad lost joke. Anyway. Previously on Malls. Yeah, that's a really good theme song.
Yes.
Also, I did a little bit of that. Oh, don't even. Michael has decided he wants to rewatch Lost again now that it's on Hulu. And I'm like, I just can't even. I've seen this show, I don't know how many times all the way through. Just stop. Okay.
I think I've seen it all the way through once, and that's enough
no
for
one needs to watch it as Michael loves it. Lost is the best show, blah, blah, blah. And you know how Michael gets about his favorite thing. So, anyway.
These are a few of my favorite things.
Penny Desmond and the island. Okay.
When it all went bad somewhere around season 4. And it made all of the fans mad.
There you go. I was trying to think of a way to what's a word that rhymes with bad?
Right.